So what's next now as far as innovation is concerned? And what is the role specifically of AI and GenAI if the idea really has been to use YouTube to democratize content and content creation? How does GenAI change the game?
Yeah. So I'm glad you said both AI and GenAI,
yes,
because today the AI conversation sort of tends to focus on GenAI, and I'll come to that in a second. But keep in mind that we have been investing in AI on YouTube for many, many years now. If you think about, again, the algorithm and recommendations on our platform, that's powered by machine learning and all the investment that we've made on that front that we will continue to do. Everything that we do from a responsibility standpoint in terms of protecting our ecosystem, the 2 billion users that come to the platform, that's also a big investment in AI. But the generative AI piece, I think, is really interesting. Again, back to something that you said at the very beginning, which is YouTube really does sit at the nexus of creativity and media on the one hand and technology on the other. And so I view our unique position in this generative GenAI revolution as connecting those two spheres, creativity and technology. And so what does that mean? Well, it means, at least from my perspective, that everything that we're going to be doing as it relates to generative AI is going to be in service of our creators.
Okay.
Meaning that they're going to be tools, never replacing our creators. And because
augmenting, essentially.
Yeah, because I've seen there's two things that I know are true every time there's like a really sort of big technology revolution, at least in the creative space. One is we all as human beings are really interested in stories of other human beings. And so our creators are always going to be front and center in this new world. But I also know that these tools can lead to new sets of opportunities that we can't even imagine today. So our investment is sort of squarely on thinking about generative AI as a set of tools for our creators. And again, here I think India has been leading the way. So we've created a standalone app called YouTube Create. It is a creation app. And it is an app that we are going to infuse with generative AI capabilities to help creators produce content on their mobile phones. We have a couple of experiments that we have been doing. One's called Dream Track, which is a way and a music AI incubator. So we have creators like King who are part of that music AI incubator, giving us feedback on how generative AI can enhance the music experience for fans. And Dream Track is an example of that, where you can give a text prompt and actually generate music, out of thin air. Dream Screen is another version of a product where now if you're a creator and you say something like, give me, a background with, India Gate and clouds in the background that are, XYZ color, it can generate that in a matter of seconds that previously might have taken that creator maybe a day or at least several hours to produce using a set of tools. And so that's what I mean. It's like allowing our creators to do something much more efficiently than they otherwise wouldn't, or allowing an entirely new class of creators to do something that would have been impossible before. And that's the focus of our generative AI efforts.
So what kind of money are you putting towards being able to create some of these tools? I mean, what is the quantum of investments both on the AI side as well as on the Gen AI side?
As I said, on the core, just AI in general, I think that is just deeply infused into our overall product development. So, all the work that we do on the trust and safety side, on the recommendation side, that's just infused with this investment in AI. So it's even hard to sort of parse what's AI versus what's non-AI, et cetera. It's really just part of our product development. And when it comes to generative AI investments, the way I think, and here we obviously have at YouTube, we have a deep collaboration with our sister company and Google DeepMind and that research, and that's more fundamental research and large language models. Our job is to build the products and features that our creators are going to use, that our viewers are going to use. And there also, I view that as core to our product development process. In order for us to be successful in this new technology, it has to be infused in terms of how we think about all of the features. And so I'm giving you the philosophy in terms of how we think about them as tools for our creators. But if we think about them that way, then they should be infused in everything that we do for our creators.
You talked about innovation, but let me also tie that down to what's happening as far as regulation is concerned, and talk specifically about what's happening in India. We've got a pretty controversial draft broadcast bill that is not up for discussion yet, but there are consultations that have taken place. How do you read that? The critics of the bill argue that it is censorship by compliance, essentially. What is YouTube's reading of the draft broadcast bill in India, and do you see similar provisions anywhere else in the world?
Well, I mean, as you point out, we work with regulators and our stakeholders in governments really all over the world. And I think that at the highest level, we have shared interests, which are to make sure that citizens of all of these countries in which YouTube operates get the most benefit out of platforms like YouTube, and making sure that those users are protected on our platform, which is a very, very shared interest between our government partners and stakeholders and YouTube and all of our creators. With respect to the broadcast bill specifically, I think it's early days. We're reviewing the bill. We're looking forward to that consultative process that you called out with the government and continuing those conversations. So that's probably the most I would be able to say about that. My team obviously is going through the analysis of it as well. But yeah, go ahead.
No, is this, I mean, getting to be a bigger challenge for you to deal with as CEO today? I mean, India's got this draft broadcast bill. Regulators around the world are looking at ways to be able to clamp down on content that they believe should not exist on public platforms. Is it getting harder to navigate public spaces online?
I think that comes with our position in terms of how central we are to the creative economy in a market like India, but really all over the world. And so in some sense, engaging with our government partners and our stakeholders is a privilege, and also frankly a necessity, because I do think that we have these shared goals. Like at the end of the day, my number one priority at YouTube, and none of the things that we talked about in terms of business models or innovation or creator opportunities would be possible without living up to our responsibility. And that means everything from, we are a platform. As I said, our mission is to give everyone a voice. We're an open platform, a platform where there are all kinds of opinions, all types of speech on our platform. But it is, from the very early days, that doesn't mean anything goes.
Yeah.
We've always had community guidelines, and it's our job, our responsibility at YouTube to make sure that our community guidelines stay up to date. They reflect the nature of the societies in which we operate, and then to be transparent about them, and then do our best using all this technology that I described, using the thousands of people we have all over the world that are enforcing those community guidelines, do our best to enforce them. And that's really the only way that I know how to live up to our responsibility and also maintain the openness of our platform that has created all of this opportunity.
And that is the current challenge, isn't it? Free speech, and yet the need to ensure that there is moderation and there are guidelines and it is a safe space. What's been the experience on that front today? I mean, I remember you saying that whatever's happening in the world is happening on YouTube, and we have active wars currently on in the world at this point in time. We've got situations that have just taken place over the last few days where there is an active call inciting violence, for instance, in different parts of the world. Do you believe that there is a need to perhaps review the moderation community guidelines, the moderation policy? Is there a need to engage actively with regulators, with governments at this point in time around the world? I mean, how do you see the road ahead on this front going forward?
I mean, I think you encapsulated it quite well. I do think what happens in the world happens on YouTube, and what happens on YouTube does influence what happens in the world. And that's why living up to our responsibility here in India, but really globally everywhere that we operate around the world, is my top priority. It's what I will prioritize above everything else, because it is the right thing for us to do, but it is also the basis of the business opportunities, the creator economy, everything that we've talked about. And so we work very closely with our partners in government here in India, but really all throughout the world. And I would say that we have a clear set of community guidelines that we have invested in very heavily over the years. In many ways, we have learned through trial by fire over the years to understand sort of how those community guidelines could be written, how they should be clear. But they are always up for being modified. It's important for us to have clear principles, but then also to be flexible in terms of how we adjust them. Because as you rightly point out, what's happening in the world is changing on a regular basis. And so that's really how I've approached the space. And it's something that's near and dear to my heart. It used to be what I was responsible for even as a chief product officer before I took over as CEO. And it's something, as I said, that I'm going to prioritize both in terms of my time, but also resources at the company before anything else.
And I know you've got the 3 Ps that you believe in: people, principles, and process. And I can see that the principles is part really of your legacy as CEO that you want to leave behind. But just to continue on this, the quantum of content that you're having to take down today versus a couple of years ago voluntarily, versus what governments or regulators are asking you to take down, which you sometimes may or may not agree with. If you can give me some color on how things have changed on that front.
Well, what I would say is that generally speaking, at the highest level, I don't think things have changed that dramatically in terms of the number of videos. Every quarter we remove millions of videos from our platform. Many times the majority of the channels that we remove are kind of spam and those types of things that we pride ourselves in being very efficient in terms of removing, because they sort of clutter the experience, get in the way of the viewer and creator experiences. And that hasn't changed. I mean, those things have sort of in terms of the raw numbers there. And remember, even when I say millions of videos removed from the platform on a quarterly basis, that's a very small fraction of the corpus of content that's available on YouTube. So I would say that that's been relatively consistent. What is also consistent, of course, is that any country that we operate in, we are going to abide by the laws of that country. And so when there are when the process in terms of following the law comes into place and that sort of channel exists, we are going to comply with that. And so that's something that we're very clear about. We want to be efficient about, and that's sort of how we approach it. But I will just, bringing it back to where the conversation started, it's important to keep in mind that the vast majority of creators and the viewership and the watch time that we're talking about is really about all of these amazing verticals that exist on our platform, whether it's sports or learning or cooking or music or all of those. And that's really the core experience that I'm witnessing during my time here in Delhi that viewers are telling me about regularly.
An absolute pleasure. We wish you the very best of luck, and we look forward to seeing you back here in India soon. And thank you very much for sharing your insights as well as your views on what YouTube's future looks like. Appreciate your time here on CNBC-TV18.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of the Global Dialogue. From all of us here on the team, goodbye. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. There's a lot more coming up right after this.